Chapter 39 Daybreak. On a chilly fall morning in 1950, Louis walked up a long road toward a complex of buildings. His whole body tingled. On the entrance archway were painted the words Sugamo Prison, and beyond it waited Louis's POW camp guards. Louis had returned to Japan. In the years since he'd entered Billy Graham's tent, Louis had worked to keep a promise. He'd become a Christian speaker, telling his story all over America. He'd scrapped together just enough money for a down payment on a house, but was still so poor that Sissy's crib was the house's only furniture, and Louis and Cynthia slept in sleeping bags. They were barely getting by, but their connection had been renewed and deepened. They were blissful together. For more than 4 years after the war, a return to Japan had been Louis's obsession, the path of killing the man who'd ruined him. But thoughts of murder no longer had a home in him. He'd come here to avenge himself, but not to answer a question. Louis had been told that all the men who tormented him had been arrested, convicted, and imprisoned in Sugamo. He could speak and think of his captors, even the bird, without bitterness now, but a question tapped it in his mind. If he saw them again, would the peace he'd found prove resilient? He'd resolved to go to Sugamo and find out. On the evening before, Louis had written to Cynthia to tell her that he was about to do. He asked her to pray for him. The former guard sat on the floor in a common room. Louis looked out over the faces. At first he recognized no one. Then he saw a face he knew, then another, then another. One was missing. Louis couldn't find the bird. When he asked where Watanabe was, he was told he wasn't there. Over 5 years, tens of thousands of policemen had hunted for him, but they'd never found him. As Louis was packing to come to Japan, the long-awaited day had arrived in the life of Suzuka Watanabe. October 1st, 1950, the day her son had promised to come to her if he was still alive. He told her he'd meet her in Tokyo at the restaurant where they'd meet 2 years earlier. That morning, Suzuka boarded a train for Tokyo. At the restaurant, Matashiro apparently never showed up. Suzuka went to the city of Kofu and checked into a hotel, staying alone, taking no visitors. For 4 days, she wandered the city. Then she left abruptly without paying her hotel bill. Police questioned the hotel matron, asked if Suzuka had spoken of her son. The matron said yes. Matashiro, Suzuka had said, has already died. In her house, Suzuka kept a shrine to Matashiro, the tradition among bereaved Japanese families. Each morning, she left an offering in his memory. In Sugamo, Louis asked what had happened to the bird. He was told it was believed the former sergeant, hunted, exiled, and despairing, had stabbed himself to death. The words washed over Louis. In prison camp, Watanabe had forced him to live in incomprehensible degradation, humiliation, and violence, leaving Louis lost in darkness and hate. But on an October night in Los Angeles, Louis had found, said a friend, daybreak. That night, the sense of shame and powerlessness that had driven him, his hatred of the bird had vanished. The bird was no longer his monster. He was only a man. As he was told of Watanabe's fate, all Louis saw was a lost person, a life now beyond redemption. He felt something he'd never felt as his captor before. For his captor before. With a shiver of amazement, he realized it was compassion. At that moment, something shifted sweetly inside him. It was forgiveness, beautiful, effortless, and complete. For Louis Zamperini, the war was over. Before Louis left Sugamo, his escort asked Louis's former guard to come forward. The prisoners shuffled into the aisle, moving hesitantly, looking up at Louis with small faces. Louis was seized by giddy exuberance. Before he realized what he was doing, he was bounding down the aisle. In bewilderment, the men who had abused him watched him come to them, his hands extended, a radiant smile on his face.